What's up, guys? Today on Dirt Lifestyle, we're going to build a flush mount winch bumper for my wife's Jeep Liberty. Today's video is sponsored by Barnes 4-Wheel Drive. If you want suspension components, battery boxes, spare tire mounts, or even just winch plates, you can check out Barnes 4-Wheel Drive, and if you see something you want, use our coupon code DIRTLIFESTYLE at checkout and save yourself 10%. The vehicle we're working on today is my wife's 2005 Jeep Liberty CRD. We're going to slowly transform this into a really fun, heavy-duty family camper slash light-duty wheeler, and I want to start with the front bumper. After pulling off the factory front bumper cover, we can start to organize a plan. The first problem is going to be mounting, and we'll get to that in a minute. The second issue is I don't want to lift this very big. I don't want to put very big tires on it, so I want to take advantage of every bit of approach angle I can. And once you remove that plastic bumper, this actually has a killer approach angle. This is really good for being unlifted, stock tires and everything else. I don't want to sacrifice any of that. So we're going to try to build this bumper really tight and make sure that we retain a lot of the performance that we just gained from losing that giant plastic cover. A lot of XJ and ZJ guys, they take advantage of the little channels like this. I don't know if they do in the front, but I know I've seen where in the rear they'll slide material into these little channels and run bolts along the inside in order to give themselves a really solid anchor point. So I'm gonna do that same kind of thing. I felt around in here and I can open this up. So once we open this up, I can take a measurement of what size that is, and then I can get the right size tube. I'll just get, if it's like 1 3/4 inch square tube or whatever it is, I will get that. I will measure as far back as I can go, and we're just gonna send a piece of material in there as far as it'll go before this weird faux frame thing turns. And then we will drill a hole through it and mount a bolt or a couple bolts on each side. I think that this is our best bet. The rest of this is thin, just like tin metal. It's not gonna be a good mounting location for a bumper. And I wanna make sure that this thing does not come off whenever we're trying to winch over big rocks or anything like that. One of the biggest benefits to working on so many projects like I have over the years is you accumulate a lot of really nice parts that are laying around. This Super Winch EXP is a great example of that. I've had this laying in the back of the shop. This is a very nice winch to just be laying in the back of the shop. And as soon as I was thinking, hey, it's time to build a bumper for my wife's Liberty, Super Winch EXP. I just knew right away. I was like, I'm using that winch because it's a great winch. It's reliable. This is equivalent to like a Warren Xeon, which is another great winch. And what you get for this price range of winches is just dead reliability. So I'm gonna be using a 1/4 inch plate to mount this to. You can go thicker, you can go crazy. The strength doesn't come from the thickness as much as it does to the design. 1/4 inch is definitely strong enough. What we need is something that's thick enough that the bolts don't rip through, but we're gonna make this rigid with design. We're gonna put some different things, some different bracing onto this plate to make sure that whenever it's pulling a big load, it doesn't bend anywhere. And that's all gonna be done with design, not necessarily material thickness. This is the time where we can adjust our height and figure out where this is gonna need to be in order for it to make sense. The higher we go, the more clearance we're gonna have, but it starts to look really funny when you get your winch way the heck up into the grill. I think this is about as high as I want to go with a winch that has a body this big, and which is not all bad. It means that we've got a pretty simple way to start this. I've got basically 2 legs to this foundation. We've got a winch plate, so I can measure, cut, drill, kind of get some things loosely mounted, and then we can start to build the bumper off of that. I secured these bumper mounts with some 3/8 grade 8 hardware, and I did that because 3/8 gives me a really good clamping force, even though it is stronger than the material it's connected to. I mean, this is just thin sheet metal. Luckily for me, the two places on the bottom that I mounted each bumper mount to is doubled over, so it's much stronger, but still doesn't warrant like a 1/2 inch or a 3/4 bolt, something heavy duty like that, because that's not gonna give me any more strength down there. 3/8 allows me to have not too overkill of a bolt, but also making it to where I can give it a ton of clamping force in order to secure this down nice and tight. I also left them just a little bit loose because I want these to have a little bit of wiggle, because I'm gonna square them up. So I'm just gonna take a framing square, I'm gonna square them up because I looked, these are very square, these tubes that are in the front, and I wanna make sure that after I tack all this stuff up and I start building this bumper, whenever I go to unbolt it, it's gotta be able to slide in and out. So if you have frame holes that are at a slight angle, you're gonna have to figure out a clever way to be able to slide everything in and out from those holes. I'm fortunate to be in the position where these are relatively square, so I just need to square them up. There we go. And now whenever I start to tack everything together, it should just slide right out. If you've watched my channel before, you know that I don't like to draw anything out. This is a case where it does help you to draw things out, but I still like to keep my mind open creatively. I would love to sit here and tell you that everything is going to turn out great and it's going to look awesome, but building a good looking bumper is very difficult. Anybody can build a bumper. Building one that looks good is hard. I honestly won't know exactly how this is going to look until the end of the video when you guys find out as well. I've got the basic shape of this winch plate figured out, and all I did to figure this out was take care of what I know. I know that I need a solid mounting location into the vehicle. I know that I need a solid plate. I always add an extra piece vertically behind the winch, because whenever you're trying to pull yourself out or you're trying to pull somebody heavy out, the winch wants to tilt forward and bend that plate. So if you weld a piece on the back here, like I did, it makes it to where it's way harder for that winch plate to bend. So I took care of the stuff that I know. Now we're at the hard part. We're at the creative part. Making a bumper look good is so difficult. So I'm seeing some lines here that I'm gonna play around with, and I'm just gonna start cutting different shapes and putting them up there and seeing what I think looks good. Slowly but surely, this bumper is turning into something. I haven't decided if I love or hate the shape that is starting to form, but it's one of those things where it's got to have a certain amount of coverage, and I'm trying to give it certain shapes to make it look a little better, and it's just going to be a dogfight from the beginning to the end. I promise that. Now, I want to stop and talk about material thickness because I know I'm going to get questions about this. I always do. And the middle is made out of 1/4 inch because it has a winch attached to it, and there's gonna be a lot of stress and strain on this middle box basically that's around the winch. And I wanna make sure that this does not move, shift, or tweak this bumper whenever I'm using the winch. But I wish that I could use thinner because of the fact that this is a unibody chassis. A lot of people don't think like this, but this is something that I always consider. A bumper is made to protect you in an accident. I mean, we're using this because we want it to look good, it's gonna hold a winch, stuff like that. But if this vehicle got in a small accident, I wanna make sure that the bumper collapses a little bit so not all of the energy is transferred into a vehicle that has no frame. It'll just collapse the front of this thing if the bumper will be beautiful. If the whole thing's made at 1/4 inch, it gets in a 10-mile-an-hour crash, I bet it won't. It'll maybe have a dent, like if that. 1/4 inch is extremely strong, but it would destroy the vehicle. So I would prefer to build the whole thing out of 1/8, knowing that 1/8 will collapse a little bit and absorb some of that energy before the rest of it is transferred into the chassis, just in hopes that if I get in a really small fender bender, it doesn't destroy the vehicle and I have to throw it away. So these outer pieces are going to be made in 1/8 because that's what I really want to make the bumper out of. Then at least if I hit a deer from the side, or if I hit the brakes and I steer off the road a little bit and I hit somebody on the sides here, then the bumper will collapse some, and I hope that I'll be able to save the vehicle. The look of this bumper is starting to grow on me a little bit. I don't love it, but I don't hate it. And I think that once I start to build out the rest of this Liberty, once I get rid of all the chrome and change it for black, once I build some custom sliders, a custom rear bumper tire carrier, a custom roof rack, this is gonna start to look a lot more at home here. But for now, I definitely wanna break up this flat look with a piece of tube. If you take a look at my J10 there, you can see clearly that's something that I'm a fan of. I really like that look of tube on plate. So I broke out the bender, and now I'm gonna just use some scrap chunks of 1 3/4, bend a really small hoop to go over that winch, and just see how it looks. For those of you who've never watched any of my videos, typically whenever I fabricate tube, I like to use these little pre-bent sections. I line them up by sight, and then I can guesstimate where I want to put what size bend. It's a really easy way to do it. I have everything written down on these pre-bent pieces of tube, so they're basically a die. So if it says 45 degrees, I hold it up there. I like that angle. I can take some basic measurements center to center, bend them at 45 degrees, and I have an indication of what it's going to look like whenever it's all done. I am much happier with the look and feel of this bumper with that bar on top. Very simple addition, very inexpensive addition. We didn't add a whole bunch of weight or anything crazy, but we added tons of looks, in my opinion. I think that this is looking so much more complete with that bar over the top. Now I wanna add a big flashy skid plate underneath. We're gonna add a big piece of aluminum that is gonna mount from the bumper to the chassis, basically where the suspension is down there, because this is IFS. And before we get to that step, I want to finish weld this. Well, what do you guys think? I really like it. I think that this bumper matches the look and feel of the Liberty quite well. There's a lot of extra parts and pieces to this that you wouldn't normally deal with something that has a little bit more of a boxy shape. And I think that a great example of that is this Jeep truck. It's got much more of a boxy shaped bumper, but it matches the boxy shape of the truck. It was something that has all these round edges. Even though you're using flat plate, you need it to kind of appear like it has a round shape. And that's why there is so many more parts and pieces to this bumper. Also, there's some big challenges underneath here because there's some thin sheet metal stuff that hangs down that's part of the core support, and I want to protect that. So I wanted this to taper up much higher and much more streamlined, but I was extremely limited at the fact that I have to protect that core support. I can't have it be hanging down. So the bottom of the bumper has some 3/16 plate that is in a shape so it will protect that core support. I'm gonna take advantage of the fact that there's this little chunk of core support here. I'm gonna drill a hole in the bottom and use this as a tab to have an extra mounting point on this side and on the other side. So that'll be the next thing we do. And then we've got to mount some lights. These are the Baja Designs LP4, and this will be an upgrade to our existing fog light that we have now covered with the bumper. So I'm gonna be mounting these on the front, and these have like a backlit LED function. And a lot of people use those for parking lights, but I'm actually going to use those for turn signals. So my front turn signal for driver and passenger side will now be done through these. And then on the sides of the bumper, I'm going to put a side marker light that's going to be a 3/4 inch LED. Building these last few brackets and tabs is super easy. I'm just gonna grab a couple pieces of 3/16 and 1/4 out of my scrap bin, cut them to length, drill some holes in them, and weld them on. This bumper is pretty much wrapped up. It's got a rough grind on it now. There's a bunch more cleaning up that needs to be done, but the bumper itself is together. It exists. It just needs to be cleaned up. I need to decide what kind of paint to use. I haven't gotten there yet. But we still have one more thing to do in this video, and that is to make some sort of a skid plate. I bought a big chunk of aluminum back here, and I like that look, that like Baja look of an aluminum skid plate on bottom with a whole bunch of dimple dyed holes, and I just think it looks so off-road. So we're gonna basically drill some holes in some sort of like a rim, weld it to the bottom here, and then we're gonna drill a whole bunch of holes in this plate, figure out what shape we want, and then we're going to put a plate that goes from the bumper all the way down to the suspension. And I think that once this is painted, it'll be black, and you see that contrast between the black and the aluminum with the dimple dye holes. I think it's going to look really good. The skid plate is bolted on, and I think it looks sweet. So, unfortunately, I think we're at the end of the video, folks. I'm at a point now where I need more time to develop my ideas, and I'm not going to be able to get that done in this video. This video is already running long. This was supposed to be 4 days of filming that turned into 8. As you notice, there's no recovery points in the front of this bumper. I think it looks clean that way. And so what I think I'm gonna do is build some sort of recovery point that's gonna bolt into these lower bolts. I think that's what I'm gonna do. I wanna have recovery points that have a big enough hole that it can accept a soft shackle. I wanna start getting away from hard shackles. So this is the reason that we're stopping the video. I really like where all of this is headed, but I truly am at a point where for me to continue this, I need to iron out the rest of my ideas. I want to finish this skid plate, and I'm at a point where I don't want to attach it to the factory skid plate. So I'm gonna have to pull the factory skid plate. I'm gonna have to build a new factory skid plate, bolt this onto it and adapt this onto it. If you notice right there, we've got the washer fluid container that is just kind of hanging down. I'm gonna have to fab a new one of those up. So I'm gonna break out the TIG welder and TIG up a new one out of aluminum. I have a lot of little things that are keeping me from finishing this project in a timely manner. So I'm gonna pull all of this off. I'm gonna finish weld it. I'm gonna paint the bumper, and I need some time to figure out how to develop the different parts that I want in order to continue this project. I don't like that I have to end this video early, believe me. I'm not happy about it. But I think that in order to get the best possible build that I can put together, I have to give myself time in order to work out the best ways to creatively tackle these problems. So it's just that simple. I could just throw together a bunch of stuff so we could finish a video and hey, yay, we did it. But that's not how I roll. I want to make the best products that I can, at least right now. And I know that if I give myself more time to think about this project and actually start another project, if I have a few weeks to stew on how to wrap this up, I'm gonna be able to have a much better final product. So thank you very much for hanging with me to the end of the video. At least you got to see the bumper be built, but this could just keep on snowballing into from an 8-day video to a 16-day video to a 24-day video. So I've got to wrap it up sometime. If you like this video and you want to see more like it, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, ring the bell, and then whenever I have a new video that comes out, it'll notify you. If you've learned anything from any of my videos, you want to help support the channel, you go to thedirtlifestyle.com. We have t-shirts, hats, neck gaiters, stickers. We even have a link to our Patreon account. And if you want to follow me on social media, I'm @DirtLifestyleNate. We'll see you next time.